Okay, so here's a theory that I've proposed in the past, and I'm proposing yet again, because here we are yet again. Okay, so perhaps that's the case, right? Perhaps, let's say, Judgment Day, the great day of his wrath. I mean, if you want to get it home to the Jews too, if you had it happen on Yom Kippur of all days, Yom Kippur, the day of judgment, the day of atonement, if that was the day that judgment began, that's going to hit home. I mean, that you couldn't pick a better day to really whoosh. They've been fasting for 40 days, right? It talks about their mourning and their fasting. It's a time of mourning and fasting, and they're fasting for God's judgment, right? And we know that 40 years after Jesus was crucified, that it always showed up in the wrong hand and all the problems that they had there in the temple. I did a video on that. Go check that out. But in any case, what a perfect day, right? What a perfect day to kick off. The great day of the Lord's wrath has come, right? So the Jews would be saying that if it happens on that day, right? It's like, oh no, the moon's red, everything's dark, and now the great earthquake happens. Boom. Well, I was thinking, when would be the perfect time for the two witnesses to show up, right? Well, there's obviously going to be a lot of chaos. If that were to happen, there's a lot of chaos going on there, right? Then we go and we tabernacle with him at Tabernacles, probably before that, I would say. Could be it even we even go at 23rd. I mean, I know people are talking about that. That's a week before Tabernacles. So that would kind of make sense too. Maybe we have a week of purification that we have to go through to be his priests in the tabernacle. Be taught how to wave our palm branch. I don't know. Whatever it is, it'll be great, okay? That's going to be awesome. But who knows? But in any case, we would probably be gone at that point, right? So now you need your two lamps stands to show up. Now, some people are talking about the last day of Tabernacles, which also makes sense because this could be the 10 days. They will put many of you in prison for 10 days. This could be 10 days of intensity. It could be a thing of, it's those Christians, they've done it, get them. I don't know if it's going to be like that. But, if there's, whether, or it could be a thing of the dead in Christ rise first, and then those of us who are still alive and are waiting, maybe we have to go through a little bit of a waiting moment there while the others are resurrected. Lots of possibilities. One reason the end of Tabernacles makes sense that I would propose is because God's not going to leave his, he's always going to leave a lampstand, right? He's always going to have a light shining. So, and the reason I say the end of Tabernacles is because, to me, a perfect time. Now, the two witnesses could come at Yom Kippur. They could come at Yom Kippur and get established and so forth, and then really kick it in at the end of Tabernacles. That could make sense too, because. But I'm going to show you some reasons why, date-wise, the end of Tabernacles could be a really good fit. And the reason, and again, it goes back to that video I did, the Earthquake, Rapture, Tabernacles. It's like it's just it's 2 years in advance, but it's the same principle. But what I was saying here with the two witnesses is that on the great eighth day of Tabernacles, right, what's known as Shemini Atzeret or Simchat Torah, it's like 2 different days. Sometimes they put it on the same day or the 22nd or the 23rd of the month of Tishri, I guess this is. But for us, it's October 7th, 8th, 9th, that time period. That is when they start teaching the Bible all over again. It's when they start from scratch. They kind of go through the whole Bible by this time. This is what's kind of like the end of the year. And at that time, Simchat Torah is when they begin all over again. And they start teaching the Word of God from the very beginning. They start over in Genesis. And they start teaching again. Let's see what this says here at Simchat Torah. Today, Simchat Torah means rejoicing with the Torah. The name Simchat Torah is of a recent origin. However, this second day of Shemini Atzeret is mentioned in 2 Chronicles when Solomon dedicated the first temple. So basically, when Solomon dedicated the first temple and even the second temple, Ezra, like with the second temple, he reads the Word of God to people and they're weeping. It's like they're hearing it all over for the first time. And it would just be so perfect for the two witnesses to come and start teaching the Bible from the very beginning, right? As if they're hearing it again for the first time. Like, now that you've seen that the great day of wrath has come, let us teach you what's going on here. Let us share with you. Let's come explain. It's like what Peter did when the tongues of fire came down at Pentecost. He says, these guys aren't drunk. Let me explain this to you. Okay. He stands up and he explains it, and then 3,000 are baptized that day. So, and the church really begins and kicks off, and then 5,000, and then it just grows from there. But that would be a perfect opportunity for them to start teaching the word, for them to appear and to begin to teach all over from scratch. It's like, you guys need to start over again because you obviously blew it. You messed up. The great day of his wrath has come, and you missed it. You missed the ride out of here. So now I'm going to teach you what you need to do to get right with God so that you don't miss it. This is your last chance. You don't miss it the last time that we have here. So it'd be perfect to me for them to start on the 23rd, because that's when they start reading the Torah from the beginning all over again. And so it'd be a perfect time for the witnesses to start all over again with them and start teaching the people the way they need to be taught, because obviously hasn't worked so far. So that's what they do. And then check this out. Ooh. All right. So if you go from Simchat Torah, that's basically the 9th, October 9th. Okay. You go 1,206 days, right? Because they get 1,260 days to preach. That takes you to March 22nd. Well, wouldn't you know, March 22nd falls exactly on the first day of Passover. Okay, so that's kind of amazing in and of itself, right? That it falls there. But it gets even better than that. Okay, so you think about it, these guys are basically, they're examples of Christ, right? They are preaching for 1,260 days, and then they get killed, just like Jesus gets killed on Passover, and they too are raised in 3.5 days later. So it would make sense if they start teaching Simchat Torah, and then they're killed at Passover, just as Christ was, and then they raise from the grave 3.5 days later, right? But there's more. There is a solar eclipse happening on October 14th, okay, of this year. Now, it's a special eclipse in that the sun will appear like a ring of light in the sky. Now, I was thinking about that. I'm like, wow, the ring of light, that's interesting. Because what it made me think of was the bowl from Zechariah. Doesn't it kind of look like a bowl? Like if you're to look down in a bowl, you see the rim of the bowl, and you think of the oil in the bowl. And so you know that bowl that's at the top of the lamp in Zechariah with the two witnesses? So I'm like, oh wow, could that be like the bowl of oil? And then it's a fire, so the oil is lighting the fire of the lamp. So you have this fiery bowl holding the oil for the two witnesses who've come on the scene. And that happens on October 14th. So now if we go back to the calendar, check this out. It's just too rich. Too rich! And you go here to October 14th, right? Am I in the right calendar? No. Hold on a second. October 14th. It's called Bereshit. Wow. And we've all heard Bereshit, haven't we? What is Bereshit? That's the first verse of Genesis. It's the beginning, in the beginning. That's literally what it means, in the beginning. Today, it says here, today the parashah is Bereshit, which means in the beginning. Bereshit is also the Hebrew name for the book of Genesis. Today is Shabbat Merifekem, which means Sabbath of blessing. It is the last Sabbath before the new moon, etc. Okay, so Simchat Torah happens. That's when the Torah officially begins. That could be where they come on the scene. But then you have this in the beginning that is taking place. Oh, wait, I got to go back in this one. That is taking place on October 14th, the same day as this solar eclipse, Solar eclipse, ring of fire, that just happens to kind of look like a bowl, that like a bowl on fire, like a bowl of oil lit for the Lord. And wouldn't you know, if you went from October 14th, let's see if I got it here. It's probably this one. October 14th, and you go 1,260 days, it lands you on March 27th. And where does March 27th land you? March 27th lands you at Resurrection Day. Resurrection Day. Or the day after Resurrection Day, depending on how you want to look at it. But March 27th. So March 27th, again, for October 14th. Now, I'm not sure when that solar eclipse begins. But I thought, wow, talk about the ring of fire. And then they are resurrected 3.5 days later. Now, God emphasizes that 3.5. Now, is he talking 3 days, 3 nights, or is he talking like 3 days, 3 nights and a half? Because that's kind of interesting. 1,260 days following the ring of fire, almost like it represents their sacrifice. It represents their ministry. It represents Christ, of course. And that bowl of oil that's between the two olive trees, the olive oil that lights the fire, that they then go and die for. And 1,260 days later, they are resurrected from the grave on Resurrection Day or the day following. Perhaps God doesn't, leave that for Christ and give them the day after, depending on how you want to interpret that verse or interpret those dates, because depending on exactly where the eclipse happens, it may fall more on the 17th. We know that the following day starts the day of the 17th anyway, but that still is pointing at 26 right there. But it could be, could be depending on how the math works on that, right? Because if you think about it, let's see, 17th, right? Is what we're talking about. You'd be crucified on the 14th and resurrected on the 17th. So, I mean, it doesn't get any more amazing than that. What more appropriate time for the two witnesses to come on the scene than when you begin teaching and preaching the word, traditionally every year, following this great earthquake, following this great escape, following all the havoc, and people go, oh no. And then God brings about a half an hour of silence for the two witnesses to do their thing. And then they get killed at Passover, just as Christ was, and they get resurrected at Passover, 1,260 days. It's exactly 1,260 days from when they start preaching, and exactly 1,260 days from Bereshit, in the beginning, and also the ring of fire, the bowl of oil lit on fire. I mean, how more appropriate could that be? Could it get any better than that? But just to give you one more, and then we'll wrap this up. And if you want to join me in the after video chat, I'd love to talk with you for a few minutes if you have any thoughts or comments about any of this. But let's look at one more thing, shall we? So if we go from this date, now we did that was October 14th, but if we go from March 27th of 2027 and we go 1,260 days, that takes us. So again, remember, they had 1,260 days, and then the Antichrist gets his 1,260 days too. See? So the beast comes out, he kills them. He kills them at the 1,260 days mark. So that's why I think they start Simchat Torah. He kills them at the 1,260 days, but then they're resurrected 3.5 days later, right? Wow, that's awesome. So it's kind of like, so that makes up for the 42 months, because I think 1,260 days and 42 months can be calculated slightly differently. So that's kind of interesting too, that there's like a 3.5 day gap in there. So you go from that day of their resurrection, let's say, and 327, you add 1,260 days for the Antichrist to have his reign, the beast to do his thing. Now that he's finally because think about it, the two witnesses, they're not going to let that Antichrist anywhere near that temple. So there's no way he's ever going to get to sit in that temple and declare himself God until he gets them out of the way. So it totally makes sense that he's chomping at the bit to get in that temple. He's chomping at the bit to say, hey, I'm the dude, right? He's chomping at the bit to get in there, but they're not letting anybody near it. They're letting it be built. Makes sense. But he's not going to let anybody go inside. Certainly not going to let some Antichrist dude go inside. So it makes sense. It's like, man, we got to open up the abyss, man. We got to get the devil, the beast of the abyss to fight this guy. Because who else is going to these guys? Because who else is going to take them out, right? And then finally he gets them out of the way. Boom, he's going right in that temple and he's declaring himself God. It's like, man, I ain't waiting any longer. Woohoo! Aren't we glad we got rid of those two pesky witnesses? Yay! Everybody's cheering because they're all, fallen and lost. And all the Christians are now run into hiding. or whatever they're doing because they're getting their heads cut off. And he says, all right, now I'll tell you who to worship. And then he goes and puts himself. He's like, it's a perfect switch, right? It's a perfect time. He's like, no, they're totally wrong. And he'll say, I'm the one who you're supposed to be following. I'm the one. And he'll set himself up in that temple at that very moment. It would make total sense. And brings in his statue of him, whether it's Chucky or whoever, but they bring in the statue and people bow down to the statue and, people worship, they put it on the wing of the temple and all that. And there you go, right? So then he gets his 42 months. So, and it'd be interesting to see what happens during those 3.5 days. I kind of wonder what's going to happen with the bodies because they don't let the bodies be buried. Do the Christians guard it? I wonder if the Christians guard the body. I don't know. Maybe they all become martyrs as well. It doesn't say it, but it's just you just kind of wonder because they don't let them be buried. Do they mutilate the bodies? I mean, what do they do to these two witnesses? But in any case, he sets himself up, and then exactly 1,260 days later, or 42 months, what do you have? And it lands exactly. So what's interesting about this? Okay, check this out. So you go from the day they resurrected, potentially, and the day the Antichrist potentially officially says, that's it, I'm in charge now. We got rid of those guys. Hoo-hoo, they were the last two. And we'll just chase the rest of them down and cut their heads off. But then he takes over, and then exactly 1,260 days later, interestingly, is the day before Judgment Day, which makes more sense, right? Because then Christ returns. See, he gets 1,260 days. He gets a full 1,260 days. Christ doesn't come back on his last day. He gets the full 1,260, right? He gets his full 42 months. There you go, Satan. You had it. How was it? Did you enjoy all that darkness? Because you're about to die now. And then Jesus comes back on Judgment Day, right? Right before his birthday. Maybe believe September 11th to be his birthday. But then he comes back the next day to clean up all the mess and to finally put an end to this guy. Now, it could be he comes back sooner because Armageddon gets fought sooner than that, and then Judgment Day, and maybe at Judgment Day is when he throws the beast and the false prophet into the. So that it could work out more like that. That's possible too. But in any case, isn't that amazing? It's exactly either way. It's exactly 1,260 days up to Judgment Day. So to me, it makes total sense if you're going to do a 7-year tribulation that it's going to be bookended by Judgment Days, right? That makes more sense than bookended by Passover. So you start with Judgment Day, the great day of this wrath has come, and you end with Judgment Day where you throw the false prophet and the beast into the lake of fire, you throw Satan into the abyss, and then, you have 1,000 years of bliss. And then you come exactly 1,000 years later, which would land on Judgment Day again to have actual Judgment Day. See? And then you have Judgment Day and the rest is eternity.